Some words follow you, not like a song you can't get out of your head, no, more like a scar on the inside of your chest. One that doesn't bleed anymore, but aches every time you breathe too deeply. My father said those words to me when I was 19 years old. Welcome back to Frontline Retribution, the channel for quiet people who get pushed 1 inch too far, in the moment the truth finally walks through the front door. If you've ever been the one who showed up when nobody was watching, this story is for you. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. We were standing in the kitchen, the same kitchen where he used to make Sunday pancakes when I was little, where I used to sit on the counter and watch him hum along to old songs on the radio. That kitchen used to feel like the safest place in the world to me, but on that particular Sunday morning, it felt like a courtroom. I had just told him about my plan. I had stayed up 3 nights in a row putting together a business proposal, a logistics consulting idea I had been building in my mind since my 2nd year of college. I was so proud of it. I printed it out on thick paper, put it in a clear folder, and set it on the kitchen table like it was something precious. He picked it up, flipped through it, maybe 30 seconds. Then he set it back down, looked me in the eye and said, "You'll never succeed at something like this. You don't have what it takes. Stop dreaming and go find a real job before you embarrass the whole family." Just like that. No softness, no "I'm worried about you," no "let's talk through this," just a verdict. Final. Delivered with the same casualness you'd use to comment on the weather. I didn't cry in front of him. I was too shocked. I picked up my folder, walked to my room, sat on the edge of my bed, and stared at the wall for a very long time. That was the moment something shifted inside me. Not shifted, like tectonic plates moving underground. Slow, quiet, but permanent. My name is Weston, and what I'm about to share with you is the story of how those words, my own father's words, became the fuel that drove me to build something he never could have imagined, and how, years later, I found out just how far I had come, in the most unexpected way possible. I grew up in a mid-sized city in Ohio, nothing glamorous. My father, Daniel Weston, was a mid-level manager at a freight company, decent salary, stable job, and an ego the size of the building he worked in. My mother passed away when I was 11, and after that, it was just the 2 of us and my older brother Marcus. My father was not a cruel man in the traditional sense. He didn't yell. He didn't raise his hand. But he had this way of making you feel small quietly, consistently, like water wearing down stone. A raised eyebrow here, a sigh there, a comment wrapped in a joke that wasn't actually a joke at all. Marcus was his golden child. Marcus played football, got average grades, worked at Dad's company right after high school, exactly what Dad wanted. Safe, predictable, inside the lines. I was the other one. I was the one who stayed up late reading business books from the library, who saved birthday money to buy my first second-hand laptop, who redesigned the school's fundraiser system at 16 and tripled their sales in 1 semester. I was curious. I was hungry. I wanted to build things. And my father, he found that unsettling. Looking back, I think he didn't know what to do with me. I didn't fit the template. And instead of trying to understand me, he just dismissed me. Over and over again. Every idea I had was too risky. Every goal was too big. Every dream was naive. By the time I was 19, I had heard some version of "you're not capable of that" so many times that I had started to believe it. At least part of me had. But the other part of me, the part that had watched my mother smile every time I showed her something I made, who had held my hand and said, "You are extraordinary," Claire, that part refused to disappear. After that morning in the kitchen, I moved out within 2 weeks. I took a tiny apartment with 2 other girls from my university. I was studying business and communications, working 20 hours a week at a cafe to pay my share of the rent. I had almost nothing, but I had my idea, and I had that ache in my chest, that scar, pushing me forward every single day. I want you to understand what those early years looked like. They were not glamorous. There were no overnight wins. I graduated, worked 3 years at a small logistics firm, soaking up everything I could. I was underpaid and overworked. I slept 4 hours some nights. I built my network one handshake at a time. And I kept my father's voice close. Not to torture myself, but as fuel. You don't have what it takes. Every time a door closed in my face, and there were many, I heard that voice. And instead of sitting down, I stood up straighter. I launched Weston Logistics Solutions when I was 26 years old. I had saved every dollar I could. I had 2 clients and a second-hand desk in a room, barely big enough to pace in. My brother Marcus called me when he found out. He laughed, genuinely laughed, and said, "Claire, come on. This isn't you. You're going to burn through your savings and crawl back. You know that, right?" I said, "I'll send you an invitation to the grand opening." He hung up. The first year was the hardest thing I have ever done. I lost one of my 2 clients in month 4. I almost couldn't cover payroll for my 1 part-time assistant. I had 3 anxiety attacks in 6 months and spent 1 entire night sitting on my bathroom floor, wondering if everyone had been right about me. But I got up. I always got up. By year 2, I had 9 clients. By year 3, 14. By year 4, I had a real office, 8 full-time employees, and a contracts portfolio worth more than my father earned in 10 years. I didn't call home to share any of it. My father and I had spoken maybe a dozen times since I moved out. Brief, polite, surface level. He never asked about my business. I never offered. There was a wall between us, and we had both silently agreed to leave it standing. By the time I was 32, Weston Logistics Solutions had grown into something I was genuinely proud of. We had 31 employees. We served mid-sized companies across 6 states. I had been featured in 2 regional business publications and had just signed the largest contract in my company's history. I remember the night that contract finalized. I sat alone in my office after everyone had gone home. I poured a small glass of wine. I looked at the city lights outside my window, and I thought of my father. Not with anger, not even with sadness, just a strange, quiet recognition. I had done it. I had done the thing he said I never could. And no one, not even him, could take that away from me now. I didn't know then what was coming. I didn't know that life was about to walk something through my front door that would shatter every wall I had so carefully built around my past, because I never not in 1,000 guesses would have predicted what happened next. It was a Tuesday in October. I remember because we had just wrapped our Monday all-hands meeting, and I was in that calm, focused mode that comes right after a productive week starts well. My operations director, Priya, knocked on my office door around 10 in the morning with a tablet in her hand. "Hey, so we posted that senior logistics coordinator position last week," she said. "We've already got 32 applications. I flagged a few that look strong. You want to do a quick review before I narrow them down?" "Sure," I said. "Send them over." She handed me the tablet, and I started scrolling. Most of the names meant nothing to me, strangers with solid resumes. I was skimming for experience and fit, not really reading closely, and then I stopped. I physically stopped scrolling. Because there, in the middle of the applicant list, was a name I hadn't seen in almost 3 years. Daniel Weston, age 58, former senior operations manager at Hargrove Freight and Shipping, my father. I read the name 3 times. Then I read the address, Ohio. Then I read the cover letter, which was formal and professional, and gave absolutely no indication that the applicant knew the company was run by his own daughter. My hands were completely still, but inside, something enormous was happening. I set the tablet down. I asked Priya to give me a few minutes. She closed the door, and I sat there in my chair, staring at the wall. The feelings that moved through me in those few minutes were so tangled I couldn't separate them. Shock, disbelief, a bitter, dark humor, almost like I wanted to laugh. And then something older, something that lived deeper. A grief I thought I had long since buried. I opened my laptop and did what any person would do. I looked him up. What I found was not what I expected. Hargrove Freight and Shipping, the company my father had worked at for over 2 decades, the one that had given him his identity, his title, his sense of worth, had restructured 8 months ago. An acquisition. New ownership. Half the management team had been let go. My father was one of them. I dug deeper. LinkedIn showed he hadn't updated his profile in over a year. A contact in the industry, someone I knew from a conference, replied to my quiet inquiry within the hour. Apparently, my father had applied to 6 or 7 companies in the past several months. No offers. He was considered overqualified in some places, and at 58, quietly passed over in others. He had been struggling for almost a year, and he had no idea, none, that the company he was applying to was mine. I want to be honest with you about what I felt in that moment. There was a part of me, I will not pretend otherwise, that felt something I am not proud of. A sharp, hot satisfaction, a voice inside that whispered, "Look at this. Look at where we both are now." But there was also another voice, quieter, more complicated, because whatever my father had done to me, whatever small cruelties had stacked up over the years, he was still my father. And somewhere under all the walls, in all the silence, I was still his daughter. I spent 3 days sitting with this. I didn't tell Priya about the connection. I didn't tell anyone. I just sat with it during meetings, during lunch, in the quiet of my apartment at night. What do you do when the person who hurt you most needs your help? What do you do when the man who handed you a wound that took 10 years to stop bleeding shows up at your door, not knowing it's your door, asking for something you have the power to give or deny? I thought about all the versions of this moment I had imagined over the years. In some of them, I was cold, distant. I let him find out it was me, and I watched his face fall without flinching. In others, I was gracious. I called him. We talked. I forgave him over coffee, and we built something new. In none of my imaginings did it look quite like this, because this wasn't a dramatic confrontation. He hadn't come to apologize. He didn't even know. He was just a 58-year-old man who had been knocked down and was trying to get back up applying to companies online, not knowing that one of them was built by the daughter he had once told would never succeed. By day 3, I had made a decision. I was going to let the process run, not to be cruel, not to humiliate him, but because I needed to know before any conversation happened whether he was actually qualified, whether the application was genuine, whether this was real. Priya called him in for an interview. I watched the interview from the hallway camera feed on my laptop. He didn't know I was in the building. He was wearing his good navy blazer. His hair had more grey than I remembered. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not in height, in something harder to name. He interviewed well. Honestly, his experience was real and strong. He knew freight logistics inside out. He answered every question professionally. Priya came to me afterward and said, "He's actually one of the strongest applicants we have. Real depth of experience. He'd be good." I nodded slowly, and I said, "I know." She looked at me. "Do you know him?" I looked at her for a long moment, and I said, quietly, "He's my father." The silence that followed was the kind that fills a room completely. Priya sat down. She looked at me with wide eyes and said, "Claire, what are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to invite him in." I called my father myself. I didn't use the company line. I called from my personal number, the one he still had saved, even if he rarely used it. He picked up on the third ring. "Claire," his voice was careful, measured, the way it always was with me, like he was holding something breakable. "Hi, Dad." There was a pause, a breath. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you," he said. I let 1 second of silence sit between us. Then I said, "I know. I'm calling about your job application." The silence on the other end of the line was unlike anything I had ever heard from him. It wasn't just quiet. It was the sound of a man realizing slowly, completely exactly what was happening. "What?" he finally said. Barely a word. More like air escaping. "You applied to Weston Logistics Solutions," I said. "I'm the founder and CEO. Your application came across my desk 3 days ago." Another silence. Longer this time. I heard him exhale. A long, slow breath. "Claire." His voice was different now. Lower, something I wasn't used to hearing from him. "I didn't know," he said. I would never have. I didn't recognize the company name." "I know you didn't, Dad." I kept my voice calm. Steady, because I had rehearsed this in my head for 3 days. Not what I wanted to say, but how I wanted to feel when I said it. I wanted to feel grounded. I didn't want to cry. I didn't want to perform. I just wanted to be honest. "I've been watching your career," I said. "I know what happened at Hargrove. I know you've been looking for a while. And I read your application and sat with it for 3 days before I called you." He was quiet. I kept going. "You interviewed with my operations director. She told me you were one of the strongest candidates. Your experience is real, and I respect that." "Claire," he started. "Let me finish, Dad." He went quiet again. "I want to tell you something. Not to hurt you. Not to make you feel small. But because I think you deserve to hear it. And I think I deserve to say it." I took a breath. "I was 19 years old when you told me I didn't have what it takes. That I would never succeed. That I was going to embarrass the family." "I know," he said. Barely a whisper. "I built this company from nothing. I slept 4 hours a night for years. I lost clients, panicked over payroll, doubted myself more times than I can count. And every single time I almost quit, I heard your voice. And it pushed me forward. I wasn't angry when I said it. I think that surprised him. I'm not telling you this to punish you. I'm telling you because it's true. And because I think you've spent your whole life measuring people by a very narrow definition of success. Including me. Including yourself." Another long silence. Then, and I was not prepared for this, I heard him cry. Not loudly. My father was not a man who cried loudly, but I could hear it, that tight, restrained sound of a person breaking in a very private way. "I'm sorry, Claire," his voice cracked on my name. I know I said things I shouldn't have. I wasn't after your mother died. I didn't know how to. He stopped. Started again. I was scared of how much like her you were. How much you wanted. I didn't know how to protect you from getting hurt, so I tried to stop you from trying. I sat with that for a moment. It didn't fix everything. One phone call cannot undo what years of small cruelties build up to. But it was something. It was real. I know, I said. I think I've known that for a while. It doesn't make it not hurt. But I know. There was a quiet between us that was different from all the other quiets. Not the silence of walls. More like open space, like a room with the windows finally cracked. So, my father said eventually, his voice steadier now. What happens now? I almost smiled. That's actually why I'm calling, I said. The position is real. Your qualifications are real. Priya, my director, she has high regard for what she saw in that interview. Claire, you don't have to. I know I don't have to, I said. I'm choosing to. But I want to be clear about something first. Okay, if you come to work here, you report to Priya. Not to me. There are no special arrangements, no shortcuts. You'll be evaluated the same as everyone else. And if you can't handle the fact that your daughter runs the company, genuinely handle it, internally, then this won't work. I understand. And Dad, I paused. If you ever make one of my employees feel the way you made me feel, if you dismiss someone, belittle someone, cut someone down because they're dreaming bigger than you're comfortable with, I will be the one to let you go. Without hesitation. A long silence. That's fair, he said quietly. That's more than fair. My father joined Weston Logistics Solutions 6 weeks later. I won't pretend it was easy. The first few months were strange. There were moments in the hallway where we'd pass each other, and I could see him recalibrating, remembering, adjusting. I'd see him start to say something the way the old Daniel Weston would say it, and then catch himself. He was trying, genuinely trying, and my team, they loved him. Not because he was my father, which most of them didn't know for the first few months, but because he was sharp, experienced, reliable, and surprisingly warm when he wasn't performing the role he thought he had to play. One afternoon, about 4 months in, I was walking past a conference room and I heard his voice. He was talking to one of our youngest employees, a 23-year-old named Anya, who had just pitched an ambitious new workflow idea in a team meeting. I stopped just outside the door. He was saying to her, "That idea of yours, the routing optimization proposal. It's bold. But bold is good. You should develop it further and bring it back with the numbers. Don't let anyone tell you it's too much." I stood in the hallway for a long moment, and I felt something release in my chest, something old, something I had been quietly carrying for 13 years. My brother Marcus called me when he found out Dad was working for me. I could hear the disbelief in his voice before he even got a sentence out. "So it's true," he said. "Dad works for you now." "He does," I said simply. "And you're okay with that?" "I am." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, and I could hear something shifting in his voice, "I owe you an apology. That call years ago, when you launched the company and I laughed at you. That was wrong. I didn't say it's fine, because it wasn't entirely fine, and he knew it. I said, I appreciate you saying that, Marcus, and I meant it. People ask me sometimes what revenge looks like, and I think what they mean is, did it feel good? When you sat across from the person who hurt you, and they finally had to look up at you? When the power shifted? When the world rearranged itself into something that looked like justice? Yes, if I'm honest, yes. There was something deeply satisfying about that phone call. about knowing that the words he had spoken in that kitchen 13 years earlier had not landed where he intended them to. They had missed the mark entirely. He wanted to stop me. Instead, he fueled me. But I want to tell you something else. Something I didn't expect. The sweetest part of it wasn't his face when he realized. It wasn't the power. It wasn't even the apology. The sweetest part was standing in that hallway, hearing him say to someone else what he never said to me, and knowing that whatever had broken between us was in some small but real way beginning to heal. That was worth more than any victory I could have imagined. I think about my mother sometimes. What she would have thought of all this. I think she would have laughed. Warmly, she had a laugh like that, the kind that made the whole room feel lighter. And then I think she would have said what she always said to me when I was small and learning and uncertain. You are extraordinary, Claire. Don't let anyone shrink you, not even the people who love you. So here is what I want to leave with you. If someone in your life, a parent, a partner, a colleague, a friend, has handed you a wound that you are still carrying, if someone looked you in the eye and told you that you were not enough, that you were too much, that your dreams were foolish, your ambitions embarrassing, your hope naive, I want you to hear this. Those words are not a verdict. They are a reflection of the person who said them, their fears, their ceilings, their inability to imagine beyond what they already know. You are not obligated to live inside someone else's limitations. Build your thing. Work your hours. Get up after every single fall. Let the people who doubted you become the fuel, not because you want to destroy them, but because you refuse to be defined by them. And if life, in its strange and circular wisdom, ever brings them to your door, you will know exactly what to do. Because here is the truth I have learnt. The most powerful thing is not hurting the person who hurt you. The most powerful thing is building something so beautiful, so undeniable, so real, that even they cannot help but look at it and know they were wrong about you. I'm Claire Weston, and I have what it takes. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. If this story moved you, please give it a like. It means more than you know. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story on Frontline Retribution. See you in the next one.